Notification came through at 7:14 on a Tuesday night, and I almost didn't see it. I was already in the garage, keys in hand. My coat still smelled like the dry cleaner plastic I'd stripped off it that afternoon because I wanted to look put together for once. My brother had texted 3 times asking if I was on my way. My aunt had even called, which she never does, just to say she was so glad we were finally doing this. Everyone was so warm, so eager, and I was standing there thinking, maybe this is the turn. Maybe the worst is behind us. Then my phone buzzed one more time. It was my accountant. Not a call, a text. Nolan Walsh had been managing my finances since I was 22, back when my grandfather first put me on the trust paperwork. He was the kind of man who sent emails at 6 a.m. and used phrases like fiduciary responsibility in casual conversation. He did not text, ever. The message said, "Do not go to that dinner. I need you to call me right now. This is not about money. This is about your safety." I stood in the garage for a long time. The automatic light clicked off. I didn't move to turn it back on. I just stood there in the dark, holding my keys, reading that sentence again. This is about your safety. My brother had sent a 4th text. We're all here. You're the only one missing. I went back inside. Nolan picked up before the first ring finished. He didn't say hello. "Where are you right now?" he said. "Still home." "What is going on?" "Good." I heard him exhale. "Okay, good. I need you to listen to me very carefully, and I need you to not panic, because panicking won't help either of us right now. You just told me my safety was at risk. I think panicking is a reasonable response." "Fair point." A pause. "You turn 26 next Friday." "I knew that, obviously." "Yes, and you know that's when the secondary distribution from your grandfather's estate releases, the remaining 60%. "I knew that too. The first 40% had come through when I turned 21. A number that had seemed enormous at the time, until Nolan sat me down and explained how fast money disappears when people know you have it. The remaining portion, the larger portion, released at 26, provided I was, in Nolan's legal document words, competent, unencumbered, and of sound decision-making capacity. I felt something cold move through me. "Nolan, 3 weeks ago," he said, "your brother retained a psychiatric consultant, not for himself. The paperwork lists you as the subject of evaluation. He has been in contact with a facility in Scottsdale, a private one, the kind with very comfortable rooms and absolutely no interest in patient advocacy. He has also been in communication with a judge who, I will be very blunt with you, has a reputation for certain kinds of flexibility." The garage light had clicked back on through the window. My car just sat there, aimed at the door. "He's gonna try to have me declared incompetent," I said. It didn't come out as a question. "At dinner tonight, the so-called consultant will be there, introduced as an old family friend. Your aunt is in on it. She's been promised a percentage for her cooperation. If they get you evaluated and flagged before Friday, the distribution gets frozen, probably indefinitely, while it goes through probate review. By the time any court sorts it out, your brother will have positioned himself as the responsible party. Conservatorship, full financial control." I sat down on the kitchen floor. I didn't mean to. My legs just made the decision without consulting me. "How do you know all of this?" I asked. Nolan was quiet for a second. "Because the psychiatric consultant he hired used to work with my firm's medical liaison on a different case. When I saw the name on an intake form that crossed my desk by accident last week, I started asking questions, and then I couldn't stop." He paused again. "I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. I needed to be certain before I said anything." I sat on my kitchen floor and tried to think clearly. And then, the way it happens sometimes, everything rearranged itself. 3 years of static suddenly resolved into a picture. The panic attacks that had started the year after my grandfather died. I had never had anxiety before in my life. Not real anxiety. Not the kind that made me cancel plans and doubt my own memory and lie awake convinced I'd made some terrible mistake I couldn't identify. But it had appeared from nowhere. Or so I thought. My brother had been so understanding, so present. "You've been under so much stress. You need to take better care of yourself. Remember what happened with Grandpa's health at the end? Mental health runs in families. It's nothing to be ashamed of." The therapist he had recommended, who I had seen for 2 years. Who won? I realized now. I had never actually researched myself. The time I missed the meeting with the estate attorney? Because I had written the wrong date in my calendar. except I hadn't written anything. I distinctly remembered typing it in. When I pulled up my phone later, the event was gone. I had assumed I'd imagined saving it. My brother had assumed it on my behalf out loud, in front of the attorney, in a tone that was gentle and sad in a way that made my skin crawl in retrospect. I had been so busy thinking I was falling apart that I never asked who was doing the pulling. I stood up off the floor. "I'm going to the dinner," I said. Nolan made a sound that was not quite a word. "Not as the person they're expecting," I said. "I need you to do something for me. I need you to contact my attorney, not the estate attorney, mine, Priya Mehta, and I need you both in a car headed toward Montclair in 40 minutes. Don't park close. And I need you to stay on the line with me through a satellite communicator I have in my bag. I bought it for a camping trip I never took. Tonight, I'm going to use it. You're going to walk into the trap. I'm going to walk into their trap with my own." Silence on the line. "Give me 45 minutes, Nolan said, "and please be careful." I hung up and went to work. My first call was to the diagnostic clinic on Harwell Street that did walk-in labs. I had passed it 100 times and never gone in. I went in now. I paid the rush rate in cash, gave them a very short explanation. I need a full talk screen and a cognitive and psychiatric clearance, and I need it time-stamped and signed before I leave, and sat in a paper gown in a fluorescent room thinking about my brother's face at our grandfather's funeral. He had cried. I had cried harder, because Grandpa was the one person in our family who had looked at me like I was capable of things. My brother had put his arm around me and said, "I'll always take care of you." I had thought he meant it kindly. 40 minutes later, I walked out with documentation that stated, in medical and legal language, that I was sober, lucid, psychologically oriented, and showed zero indicators of impairment. The timestamp was 8:30 and 3 p.m. I sat in my car and made the call I had been putting off. My cousin answered immediately. Zara was 20, still living in my aunt's house, technically an adult, but practically still treated like furniture. She had called me twice in the past month with no explanation and hung up both times when I answered. I had assumed she was going through something and didn't know how to ask for help. I understood now that she had been trying to warn me and hadn't known how to say it. "Aunt's house," I said when she answered. "Tonight. Is there a doctor there already?" A very long silence. "Zara, I know. Just tell me." "He's in the study," she said very quietly. "He got here an hour ago. He told everyone he's your uncle's college roommate. He keeps checking his watch." A shaky breath. "There's a black SUV parked on the service road behind the property. I saw 2 people in it when I took the recycling out. They were watching the house." I closed my eyes. "There's a black SUV on the service road." Of course there was. "You can't do an involuntary hold without transport." "Okay," I said. "I need you to do one thing for me. Just one. Can you do that?" "What is it?" "The bar cart in the living room. There should be a crystal decanter with red wine. My brother always sets it out specifically when I come over. He knows it's my preference." I paused. "Has he already poured anything into it?" Silence. Then, he was in there alone for like 10 minutes before anyone else came downstairs. That was all the confirmation I needed. "Switch it," I said. "Pour it down the sink. All of it, rinse the decanter twice, and refill it from the unopened bottle in the pantry cabinet. Top shelf, the one nobody ever touches. Do it now, before anyone comes back in. And Zara, when you're done, go upstairs to your room and stay there." What's going to happen? Something that should have happened a long time ago. Are you going to be okay? Another pause. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out," she said. "Go." I started the car. The drive to Montclair usually takes 35 minutes. I made it in 30. The neighborhood my brother had moved into 2 years ago was exactly the kind of neighborhood that seemed designed to signal something. Large houses set back from wide, silent streets. Landscape lighting that made everything look like a stage set. His house in particular had always felt like it was performing the idea of a home rather than actually being one. I parked one street over and walked. The lights were all on. Through the front window, I could see movement. My aunt gesturing at something. A man I didn't recognize standing near the fireplace. The consultant. I took a breath and thought about how I had looked in the mirror at the clinic. Not fragile, not uncertain. I had looked like someone who had been paying attention. I rang the bell. My brother opened the door. He was wearing the navy sweater I had given him for Christmas 2 years ago, and his expression arranged itself instantly into something warm and relieved. That was the thing about him. He was good at the face. He had always been good at the face. You made it, he said, and hugged me. And I felt him clock my posture, my steadiness, and something behind his eyes made a small recalculation. We were starting to worry. You sounded stressed on the phone earlier. Traffic, I said. You know how the interchange gets? I walked in. The dining table was set beautifully. My aunt came over and held both my hands and told me how wonderful it was to see me, her voice pitching just slightly higher than natural. The consultant, introduced as Dr. Reeves, an old friend of the family, shook my hand with the practiced ease of someone performing normalcy rather than inhabiting it. He had assessing eyes, the kind that are measuring you while the mouth is saying something pleasant. Aurora has told me so much about you, he said, and then caught himself immediately and corrected. Sorry, your brother has. My name is not Aurora. He had never met me before in his life. He had gotten his briefing mixed up with another case. I smiled and said nothing. The decanter sat on the bar cart across the room, the wine catching the light beautifully. My brother drifted toward it with a natural ease that wasn't natural at all. Let me get you a glass, he said. You look tense. The drive was probably rough. It was, I said. I let my voice go just slightly soft at the edges. I let my hands grip each other in my lap. I gave him exactly what he expected to see, a version of me worn down and just fragile enough to be guided. I've been having a hard few weeks. I don't know. I feel like I can't trust my own head lately. He turned from the decanter and his expression did something I recognized. It was a specific kind of satisfaction, not obvious enough to be cruelty, subtle enough to look like concern. I had seen it for years without knowing what I was seeing. That's why we're all here, he said. We're your family. We're going to figure this out together. He brought me the wine. I held the glass. Let it sit in my hand. Let him watch me hold it. Dr. Reeves leaned forward slightly in his chair. My aunt had gone very still. My brother was watching the glass with an attention that he was working hard to disguise as dinner conversation. To family, I said. To family, my brother said. I drank. The wine was exactly what it should have been. Nothing else. Zara had done it. 7 minutes passed. I know because I was watching the clock on the mantel, and so was my brother, though he was doing it less obviously than he thought. Dr. Reeves had positioned himself between me and the hallway to the front door. My aunt had found a reason to move toward the kitchen, close to the service entrance, I noted. The service road, the black SUV. At minute 7, my brother leaned forward. How are you feeling? He asked carefully. You look a little pale. I'm okay, I said, and let my voice drop just a fraction. Just enough. A little dizzy, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm just tired. I watched relief move across his face before he could stop it. He exchanged a look with Dr. Reeves that lasted less than a second. Then everything accelerated. I think we should get you somewhere comfortable, my brother said, rising from his chair. And Dr. Reeves stood at the same moment, and I heard the service door in the kitchen open, my aunt letting someone in. I stood up. Sit down, my brother said, and his voice had dropped the warmth entirely, the way a coat drops when someone lets go. You're not well. We're trying to help you. I know exactly what you're trying to do, I said. The room stopped. I reached into my bag and set the satellite communicator on the table. The small green light was solid and steady. This has been live for 22 minutes, I said. My accountant and my attorney are currently parked 4 blocks from this house, and they have been listening to this entire conversation. The 2 people my aunt had let in to the kitchen, both in dark clothing, both moving with the specific purposefulness of people who do this for money, slowed at the entrance to the dining room. They looked at each other. Then they looked at my brother. Dr. Reeves said, she's having an episode. She's not making sense. I'm going to need you to be very quiet, I said pleasantly and put the lab paperwork on the table next to the communicator. Time-stamped toxicology screen from 8:30:03 this evening. Clean. Comprehensive psychiatric and cognitive clearance. I am legally documented as sober, lucid, and fully oriented 47 minutes before I walked into this house. I looked at Dr. Reeves. Touch me, and you lose the license you apparently didn't earn. His face did something complicated. This is insane, my brother said. You're paranoid. You're confused. You've been confused for years. Everyone can see it. The decanter, I said. Go look at the decanter. He went still. Zara switched it for me 2 hours ago. Whatever you put in there is in the Montclair sewer system right now. I watched his face do the calculation and reach the wrong number and then the right one. She's been watching you for a long time. She's better at it than you are. From outside, I heard it, the sound of tires on the quiet street. More than one car. My brother looked at me the way people look at someone when the version of them they invented finally dissolves, and the real person is standing there, and it's too late to do anything about it. You were supposed to be the easy one, he said, just like that. Flat and honest in a way he'd never been with me before. I know, I said. I was the one who actually loved this family. You mistook that for weakness. The front door opened. Nolan came in first, and Priya behind him, and behind them 2 officers from the county, which Priya had arranged from the car on the drive over. She'd had more than enough to work with. My brother sat down heavily in his chair. My aunt began crying in a way that was more performance than feeling, which I had always known about her and had always chosen to look past. Dr. Reeves tried to leave through the kitchen and was stopped before he reached the service door. The 2 people in dark clothing, to their credit, simply sat down on the floor without being asked and waited for instruction. They were transport, not architects. They hadn't known the details. I didn't have a lot of sympathy for them, but I had less than none for the people who'd hired them. Priya stood next to me while Nolan spoke with the officers. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, very quietly, "You got here before us." "I've been getting here slowly for 3 years," I said. "Tonight, I just moved faster." There's a thing that happens after something like this, where the immediate crisis ends and the larger one begins. The paperwork. The legal process. The family members who weren't there calling to get their version of events established early. The sleeplessness that comes not from fear but from replaying everything. Looking for the moment you should have seen it. I went through all of that. My brother did not go to jail that night. That's not how it works. Not immediately. Not when the lawyers get involved and the paperwork is complicated. But the estate attorney was notified by Priya before midnight, and the documentation was filed, and the distribution that released on my 26th birthday released to me and only to me as my grandfather had intended. Dr. Reeves lost his license. That took a few months, but it happened. The medical board was not, as it turned out, interested in his flexibility. The 2 transport employees cooperated with the investigation. My aunt settled something separate and moved to a smaller house in a different city and does not contact me. What happened to my brother and when? Is something I'm going to let the legal process describe in its own language. What I'll say is that he underestimated 2 things: a younger cousin who had been taking notes from the inside, and the particular stubbornness of someone who has been told for years that she can't trust her own mind. Zara lives in my guest room now. She's applying to schools. She laughs more than I've ever heard her laugh, which is a sound I didn't know I'd been missing until it was there. I don't have a simple feeling about any of it. I loved my brother. I loved the version of him I believed existed. Losing that, the real loss, the grief of it, doesn't cancel out what he did. It doesn't make the anger smaller. It just lives alongside it, and I stopped trying to make those 2 things resolve into something neater. My grandfather used to say that the people who are supposed to take care of you will sometimes do the opposite, and that knowing the difference between those 2 categories is the most important education you'll ever get. I thought he was being cynical. I understand now that he was being practical. I'm not interested in revenge as a concept. Revenge implies that you're still organized around someone else's damage. What I'm interested in is forward. What the money actually does. What I actually build. Who I actually become when I'm not spending every resource I have on staying upright in a current someone else is generating. That's the thing no one tells you about getting free. It's not a moment. It's a direction. You just have to keep choosing it. I'm still choosing. There's something I've been sitting with since all of this ended, or at least since the legal part of it moved into the slow, grinding phase where you stop holding your breath every morning. My brother didn't become who he was overnight. That's the part that took me the longest to accept. The planning, the patience it required, the years of small erosions. None of that is something a person builds in a moment of weakness. It's a choice that gets made repeatedly, over and over, in the quiet spaces where no one is watching. And every time he made that choice, I was in the next room trusting him. I used to think that was my failure. I've stopped thinking that. What I understand now is that the capacity to be deceived by someone you love is not a character flaw. It's actually evidence of something intact in you, the part that believes people mean what they say, the part that extends good faith because you would want it extended to you. My brother counted on that part of me. He built his entire strategy around it. The cruelty wasn't incidental. It was the point. But here is the thing about choosing to harm someone for long enough. It requires you to become smaller. Every lie you maintain, you have to remember. Every false concern you perform, you have to sustain. Every person you bring into the scheme, my aunt, Dr. Topter, Reeves, the transport team in the black SUV, becomes another variable you have to manage. You spend so much energy building a fiction that you stop developing anything real, and eventually, the fiction is all you are. I was building things the whole time I thought I was falling apart. I kept my finances organized enough that Nolan could spot the anomaly. I maintained a relationship with Zara that made her want to protect me when it mattered. I had an attorney on file who answered her phone on a Tuesday night and drove 40 minutes without being asked twice. None of that happened by accident. It happened because even when I doubted my own mind, I kept showing up. I kept doing the small things correctly. I kept treating people like they were worth something. That's not luck. That's years of quiet, unglamorous effort paying a bill I didn't know I'd been running up. Nolan told me afterward that when he saw the intake form with my name on it, he almost convinced himself he was misreading it, that it couldn't be right. He said the thing that made him pick up the phone was simpler than any professional obligation. He said he just knew I was one of the people who deserved to know. I've been thinking about that a lot, about what it means to be someone that other people want to protect. It's not about being likable or strategic or even particularly impressive. It's about being consistent, being honest, being the kind of person who, over years and years of ordinary interactions, gives people a reason to be in your corner when the extraordinary ones arrive. My brother thought he was taking something from me. What he actually did was prove exactly how much I had already built. I'm not the same person I was before any of this, but I think I'm more myself than I've ever been. And that, more than the money, more than the outcome, is what I didn't know I was fighting for.